Students, welcome to day 24 of 30 days study plan of commerce. Hope you are following this plan regularly. Those who are watching this video first time, please watch my other videos also to follow 30 days revision plan. If these videos are useful to you, please like, share and subscribe. Students, let us see day 24 question answers. Very short answers from lesson 20, third one. Mention any two disadvantages of liberalization. You learned already the meaning of liberalization. It is relaxing laws or rules by government. So when we have liberalization, there are certain disadvantages. So in that any two you can write. I have taken increase in unemployment and loss to domestic units. Here, trade liberalization often leads to shift in the balance of economy. So some industries grow and some decline. Therefore, there may be often structural unemployment from certain industries closing. Next is loss to domestic units. With fewer entry restrictions, it has been possible for many entrants to make inroads into the country, which poses a threat and competition to the existing domestic units. Next is name the industries which are reserved for public sector. Following are the industries that are reserved for public sector: arms and ammunition. Arms here, arms are weapons, especially bombs, guns. Ammunition is bullets and rockets that are made to be fired from guns. Atomic energy, coal and lignite, mineral oils, mining of ores, mining of copper, lead, zinc, etc. for atomic energy and railways. Currently, only atomic energy, defense and railways are government monopoly industries. Next is give any two advantages of globalization. Globalization meaning also you already learned. It is the removal of barriers between national economies for free and open trade among nations. So when we follow that, when we follow this globalization, there are some advantages. In that two I have taken: increase in foreign collaboration. Globalization increases foreign collaboration through various modes such as joint venture. Uh, Two companies can have a joint venture and they can even merge, and franchise. Turnkey projects. Turnkey project, it is a project that is constructed so that it can be sold to any buyer as a completed product. For example, it is a contract under which a firm agrees to fully design, construct and equip a manufacturing business and turn the project over to the purchaser when it is ready for operation. They will sell it for a consideration, and that is turnkey projects. And next is second advantages is expansion of market. The size of operation of business moves from local to national and from national to international. Now short answer: who is a shadow director? He is one of the types of directors. A person who is not the, he is actually not the board of director but has some power to run the business. He can be appointed as the director but according to his or her wish. Next is state the minimum number of directors for a private company. In case of one person company, the requirement of director is 1. Other private companies, the minimum requirement of director is 2. And next is what is special resolution? A special resolution is the one which is passed by not less than 70% of majority. That is, the number of votes cast in favor of, it is cast in favor of the resolution should be 3 times the number of votes cast against it. The intention of proposing a resolution as a special resolution, it must be specifically mentioned in the notice of the annual general meeting. So the following matters is requires special resolution. to change the registered office of the company from one state to another, to change the objectives of the company, to change the name of the company, to alter the articles of association, to reduce the share capital, subject to the confirmation of the court, to commence any new business, to appoint the auditor for the company, to appoint the sole selling agents in specified cases, to determine the remuneration of the director. I have taken 9 points. You can write few points. 3 to 4 points you can write. And next, long answers from lesson 21. Distinguish between sale and agreement to sell. First, the meaning of this is sale is the property ownership in the goods passes from the seller to buyer immediately. So as soon as this contract, when the ownership is transferred to buyer, the seller is no more owner. Here the property, the ownership or title in the goods has to pass at a future time. Sometimes after the fulfillment of certain conditions specified in the contract. Risk of loss. In under the case of sale, where the goods sold under the contract of sale are destroyed, the loss falls squarely here directly on the buyer, as the ownership in the goods has already passed on to the buyer. So the buyer only has to take the responsibility of the loss, though the goods are in the possession of seller. Here, where the goods under the agreement to sell are destroyed, the loss falls directly on the seller. As the ownership is still vested, it is remained with the seller, though the possession of goods is with the buyer. Okay, the seller has to bear the loss. Here the buyer has to bear the loss. And consequences of violating. Suppose if the buyer fails to pay the price under the sale, the seller cannot seize the goods, but he can file a case against the buyer for violating the contract. Here, if the buyer violates the contract, the seller can repossess the goods. If the goods are with the buyer, he can go and repossess the goods from the buyer, and he can sue for damages for the violation of the contract. Nature of contract. It is already completed. Contract is executed. Here it has to be done, yet to be performed, yet to be carried out by the party to the contract. Next, insolvency of the buyer. In sale, if a buyer becomes insolvent before he pays the seller, he can claim only rateable dividend. Rateable dividend is estimated part of payment only he can get. The seller has to inevitably part with the possession of the goods under his custody. Okay, if the goods are under his custody, he has to hand over to the assignee of official assignee, and then he has to get the claim only rateable, that is of estimated part of payment only he will receive. Here, if the buyer becomes insolvent before the payment, the seller can retain the goods. If he has not delivered the goods, he can retain. Suppose if the goods are with the buyer, then he can repossess. He can go and get the goods back, even if the possession of the goods is transferred to the buyer. Okay. Now it is in the case of seller. If the seller becomes insolvent before delivering the goods to the buyer can claim the delivery of goods only from the official receiver. Official receiver is an officer in the law court who is appointed for an insolvent person to relieve of his debts to the creditors. So from the official assignee only the buyer can get the delivery. And here if the seller becomes insolvent, further if the buyer has already paid the price of the goods or made any advance, he can claim only the estimated part of payment only, and not the goods, because the ownership is not yet passed to him. And next is another question. Classify goods under the Sale of Goods Act. Here goods can be classified under three categories: existing goods, future goods, contingent goods. Under existing goods there are subdivisions: specific goods, ascertained goods, generic or unascertained goods. Now see here, existing goods. The goods which are owned or possessed by the seller at the time of the contract of sale. or even the goods possessed by the agents, sale by agents or by pledges. So those goods are also existing goods. Okay, existing goods have three categories. Specific goods. Specific goods denote goods identified and agreed upon at the time of the contract of sale. Example, if a buyer selects a particular type or variety of saree after examining several other sarees, the selected one denotes specific goods. Ascertained goods, it is refers to goods which become ascertained subsequent to the formation of the contract. And then unascertained goods or generic, these goods which are not identified and agreed upon. For example, A wants to buy a car from a showroom where different models at different prices have been displayed. So all these displayed models represent unascertained goods. So unascertained goods are not identified, not agreed upon at the time of the contract of sale. Next, future goods. These goods which a seller does not possess right now, but which will be manufactured or produced or acquired by him after entering into the contract. For this, an example is a contractor agrees to supply 100 bags of rice to be for giving marriage feast. So it is a case of future goods. Similarly, the bus company agrees to buy spare parts from a particular supplier. It is an example of future contract. So future goods represents unascertained goods because the seller has to manufacture or produce after he enter into the contract of sale. Next is contingent goods. These goods, the acquisition of goods which by the seller depends upon a contingency. A contingency here means an event which may or may not happen. Contingent goods are part of the future goods. Example, A agrees to sell a particular painting work provided he gets from C. In this case, the painting work represents contingent goods. If he gets from the C only, he can supply to the buyer. If he is not able to get, then he cannot do that. Similarly, one more example. A rice merchant agrees to supply 10 bags of basmati rice from Pakistan if he gets supplies. In this case, acquiring basmati rice from Pakistan is an event. If he gets, he can supply. If he didn't get, then he cannot supply the rice to the buyer. Okay, so that's all, student. Today's 8 questions I have explained. Hope you will study and follow. If these videos are useful, please like, share and subscribe.